everyone, Miss B Hanley here, and today we are in front of a new bookshelf. Not to worry though, I am still in the classroom. Summer is starting and I decided to film in front of my home bookshelves because I'm going to be at home for some of these days. And additionally, I wanted to try something new with some of the books that are on our summer reading list. In the past, I have done summer reading streams for some of the books, and I wanted to just try something different with some of the longer books that are on the list, some that I have read, that I have wanted to read, and just read them along with you and share my thoughts on them. And I've got a whole bunch of books lined up for summer reading this year, and I'm really excited to talk about the books that I've been reading and that I'm really into, and hopefully share them with you and hopefully get your thoughts on them as well. So the first book that I'm picking off of the 8th grade summer reading list is Renegades by Marissa Meyer, Marissa Meyer, excuse me. And it's a long one. It's a chunky book, but it's, I'd like to just kind of go through it and share my thoughts about it and see, what you'll all think about it. I did start reading this in May, so technically summer hasn't fully started yet. We've got another week of school left, but I wanted to get a jump start on it. So I've got a lot of books to get through, and this one is a pretty long one because it is one of the more popular ones on the list. Some people said it was kind of in the vein of Scythe, which is the one that I read last year, which I absolutely loved. I cannot get over how much I loved Scythe. It was honestly the book series that got me back into reading. Reading Scythe was like going back to me being a teenager and reading Harry Potter again. Like, that's how excited I was for that series. So I really, really love that series, and I'm hoping to kind of find more books like it, or at least inspire myself to read more books. So let's jump into Renegades. I started reading this a week or so ago, and I already filmed my initial thoughts on it when I started reading it at school, so we'll jump to the clip. First ever reading vlog day, and I am reading Renegades by Marissa Meyer. It's part of the 8th grade summer reading list. I've never read it before. Last year I read Scythe, and I could not get over how amazing it was. And so I just really dug in deep with Neil Shusterman, but now this year I'm trying out Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I've heard that it's not as deep as Scythe, but I've heard it's more like superheroes, but with a dark side, kind of like The Boys, but YA. And I would definitely say it gives off that darker vibe. There's a couple of quotes on the back of this book that mention Marvel, but I definitely think that this book is a lot less PG than Marvel. I feel like Marvel is very Disney-fied. It's very safe, family friendly, and this is very hard and dark. The first chapter, I was absolutely floored by how dark and kind of sinister it was. It was very much almost like a DC feel than Marvel. It felt more dark, like DC. The characters are really interesting. I love at the beginning of this book, she puts an actual list, like an actual cast of characters. And I did find myself referencing it a couple of times while I was reading the first few chapters. Currently, I am on chapter 5, page 70. And there were a couple of moments where I was like, wait, who is this character again? What's this person supposed to do? And the cast of characters at the beginning of the book really, really helped me better frame who I was reading about and who the different superheroes and characters were. I'm really loving it so far. I'm hooked. I'm into it. The fact that I read 70 pages in one sitting is kind of a big tell for me. Usually, if I'm bored by a book, I'm done within the first 10 pages. I really like the characters. I like the vibe that it's setting off. Early on in the book, you kind of get this vibe that there's this group called the Renegades, and they are supposed to be the superheroes. They're supposed to be the people who come and save everybody from the villains, from the dystopian world that has been created by these prodigies, these people with superpowers, and the Renegades come in and basically save everybody. But very early on in the book, you get this sense that the Renegades aren't really that good, right? Maybe they say they are, maybe they act like they are, maybe they kind of put on this facade of being good superheroes, but there's still this very underlying sense of are they really good? Are they really superheroes? So already that's being set up, and I really do like that. I love that whole like subverting the normal idea of superheroes kind of thing. So I'm excited to get more into this book. I'll let you know when I get to another good spot. But so far, it's great. And now we're back, and I have read about 200 pages of Renegades. There's been a couple of things. Like, obviously I initially started to enjoy it, and honestly, I did. I've realized, though, in the next 100 or 150 pages or so, I am not into superheroes. I mean, I liked the Marvel series. I never really got into DC that much. I liked comic books for a while, but superheroes were never really my thing. I just kind of realized that. Like, it's not really been my cup of tea. But you know what? That doesn't mean it's like, I'm just saying it's for me. You know, if you like superheroes, if you're into Marvel, if you're into DC, you're really probably gonna love this series and this book in particular, because that's what it's all about. But I do like this book so far. There was one thing, maybe a couple things, that kind of has stuck with me, not necessarily in the best way. I got to, I think it was chapter 10, and there's this point in the book, like, so there's an initial setup at the start of the book with the main character of Nova and how, like, her backstory, basically her origin story of how she became Nightmare, which is the superhero she identifies, like her superhero identity. It's obviously very dark and sad, but when I got to chapter 10, and I did take a break, and I have like been reading this book kind of slow because I've been finishing up the school year, and I've been reading other things alongside this book. But I got to chapter 10, and there was this whole section of chapter 10 that just reiterated everything that happened at the beginning of the book, and it almost felt like I was reading the start of a sequel. Like, you know, when you read a series and something happens in the first book and then the writer rehashes what happened in the first book, it almost felt like that, except for the beginning of the book. And it was kind of weird. Like, I was like, did she forget that she has already told us this stuff? It just felt weird. Like, it was just kind of a weird segment to add into this chapter that it, like, not even that long ago I read about, which I thought was just kind of strange. On top of the fact that, like, it led her to have a flashback about some other things that happened, like particularly after her family's death, like where she went to and how she became Nightmare, how the whole anarchist group started, and what happened to her uncle, which was new information, but it felt disjointed for some reason. Like, she was in the middle of this present day scene with a friend, and then has this flashback, and then it like cuts off at the end of the flashback, and then we're back in the modern day scene. Like, it was just, I don't know, it just was a really strange writing choice, and it just kind of threw me off guard. I don't know, it put me off a little bit. Like, it just was like, it took me out of the book for a minute. Maybe it didn't jar anybody else out of it, but it was just this weird way of presenting the flashback that kind of just took me out of the story a little bit. And then the other thing that happened, there's two like main characters, you could say, in this book. The main character is the one I just mentioned, Nova, who is also known as Nightmare. And then there's this other main character who's like on the superhero side. So Nova's on the villain side, and there's another kid named, what's his name? Adrian, characters' names. They're like students' names, you know, they just disappear from my brain for 5 seconds, and then it takes me a while to like remember where I'm at. The other main character's name is Adrian, and he's on the superhero side. So he's like on the good side, you could say. And he's talking to his superhero parents who are like the main superheroes of the world. They're like the top superheroes, like, that are running the world basically. And they're like the Superman. And so he's talking to them about Nightmare, who he has encountered, and it's like they're enemies, right? Like they had a fight. And so he's like trying to figure out who she is and where she came from. And he mentions to his dad that he's fought her once before. And then he says, and actually, my team has met her twice, and we failed in defeating her twice. And then I was like, when did he encounter her the second time? Like, I know I'm slow, and I know I'm not the quickest reader, but I also don't remember him or his team of superheroes fighting with her 2 times. And I feel kind of dumb for that, and I like looked back at the chapters, and I honestly don't remember. Like, there's the initial fight at the very beginning of the book, and they fail at attempting to capture her and stop her. But then the other fight that happens between the heroes and the villains doesn't involve Nightmare or Adrian's team. And it just felt like, I feel like I'm keeping track of like too many characters almost, because I literally, like, I'm having a hard time remembering all of the situations, because the 2 main characters, Nightmare and Adrian, have alternate identities, right? So Nova is mainly known as Nightmare, but then she goes undercover as Insomnia, and then Adrian's mainly known as Sketch, but then he has an alternate ego or an alternate personality known as the Sentinel. And nobody knows that he's the Sentinel, right? And it's like a secret. So it's really hard to keep track of. The one thing I do, like I think I mentioned it earlier in my other review about this book, is that they have like a cast of characters at the beginning of the book that helps you remember who everybody is and their powers and stuff like that. But it doesn't keep track of their alter egos, right? Like, it doesn't keep track of their alternate identities that they're using in the book, which is kind of confusing. And additionally, there are side characters that do get involved with the villains and with the superheroes who are not mentioned in the cast of characters, and so that's kind of hard to keep track of too. I almost wish that she didn't have the cast of characters. It's like, at one point it is super helpful, but at the same time I'm like, I wish like there was more added to the cast of characters. I'm just at this point in the book where I feel really confused. Granted, I'm a third of the way through the book. I'm a little over a third of the way through the book. I haven't even hit the midway point yet. And it's like, the plot is getting good. Like, I do like where it's going, but there are certain things in the story that are just a little confusing to me. Like, I feel like I'm not keeping track of the story very well. And then there's other points where, like, obviously the point of view switches between Nova and Adrian, and there are jumps in the story. So there's like moments where things happen not on the page, but they're referenced in the next chapter. Like, Nova gets the idea to infiltrate the superheroes who are known as the Renegades. She gets the idea to infiltrate them, but then it's not said on the page that they come up with that plan. At least I don't remember it. I don't remember it being said on the page that they came up with the plan. It's just suddenly like, oh, this is our plan to do this. And it doesn't really explain like where it came from or like how they came up with the plan. They just decided after an altercation they were gonna infiltrate the Renegades. So yeah, it's just weird. Like, there's a couple of things where it's like, I feel like she doesn't need to reiterate some stuff, and she does spend a lot of time reiterating some stuff about the world and about the characters. And then it's time where she just straight up leaves stuff out. And it's like, okay, well, I have to like guess, like assume what happens in between some of the chapters. I mean, overall, I'm liking it so far. Like, surface level as a reader, I'm enjoying it. I don't mind the fight scenes. Fight scenes have never really been my thing. Like I said, I'm not really like a superhero person. And reading fight scenes, even watching fight scenes sometimes can be really boring for me. That's just me. I totally take responsibility for that criticism, because it's honestly just me. Like, there are times watching Marvel movies and I wish I could fast forward through some of the fight scenes, because I mean, I really don't care. That's just me, you know? I'm not that type of media consumer. But I'm liking it. I'm gonna keep reading it. I'm not gonna stop here for sure. It's nothing's putting me off to where I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I have to stop reading. I have to move on because I do want to finish it and I do like it enough. And I have read Marissa Meyer's other books. I have read the first book in the Lunar Chronicles. I have read Cinder, but I never finished the series. I never really got into the rest of the series. I liked Cinder, but it wasn't enough to keep me going into Scarlet and Cress and Winter and the rest of the series. Like, it wasn't enough to keep me entranced in it. There are honestly, since I finished The Hunger Games back in 2011, I have not really gotten into series. The other series I think after that really, like, I had to keep reading all the books was the series of Unfortunate Events, which I did read after The Hunger Games. And then Scythe, the Arc of a Scythe series, was the last really, really good series that I had to read all the books in. But there's like been very, very, very few books and like starter books out of a series that have gotten me into reading the whole series. But that's just how it's been. Like, I know some people are like, I have to finish the series, I have to keep going, like I have to read them in order and all that kind of stuff, but it's just, I don't know, just not me as much anymore. Okay, well that's where I'm at right now. I will update you when I get further, a little bit further in the book, and I will share my thoughts when I get there. So yeah, see you soon. Back again. I have deliberately waited in reading the rest of the book, even though I've really wanted to finish it, because I want to give you my thoughts on the next 100 pages. The last time I talked to you, it was at 250. There was still, like, I talked about some inconsistencies. The inconsistencies abound in this book. There's so many moments where I feel like the writing forgets what's supposed to happen in certain like timelines and stuff. There's like a moment where the two main characters are talking. Nova has infiltrated the Renegades and she is talking to Adrian about their first mission. And he's like, yeah, it's tomorrow night. We'll see you there. And then later on the conversation, he's like, okay, see you tonight. And it's just like these little tiny inconsistencies are really pulling me out of the book. And they continue to pull me out of the book until I got to the best scene, I feel, in the book, which is the library scene. And I think I liked it because it's a library scene. And I just think that it's very cool. It's a very like cool plot device to have a post-apocalyptic world that has a library, you know, being run by a person who has superpowers. And he's supposedly has connections to the villains in the book, in the world, which is really interesting. And I love the whole concept of it. And like the description of the library was really fun. I will say something that I really love about this book are Marissa Meyer's descriptions of the city. They're the best thing about this book, the descriptions of the different buildings and how they look and the city. She seemed to really put a lot of thought into how the city looks. And going into the library, again, the descriptions of the shelves and the books and how, and like the private reading rooms. And it's probably the best part of the book is reading the descriptions of the city. I could read the whole book, just her describing the different parts of the city. It's really fascinating. I loved the librarian. I loved his granddaughter. I thought it was very cool. It was very tense. It was a very tense scene because it seemed like Nova's cover was about to be blown. It was probably the best action conflict scene that happened because it was very tense and it was a big twist of things that you did not expect to happen. And the main character really starts to have her internal conflict really starts to come to a head, which is, you know, she is on the villain's side of this conflict between the superheroes, and she's now infiltrated the superheroes, and now she's kind of feeling like maybe she doesn't know where she is. Like, she doesn't know what side she really should be on, because obviously she's a villain, and she has like a longer game to play while she's infiltrating the superheroes, but at the same time, like, doing superhero things seems to be positive for her, like seems to like, you know, feel right to her. So in a certain extent, I feel like that's really, this was the most interesting part of the book. We got to the part I'm at now, like right before the part I'm at now, I feel like is a good stopping place for the book. And there are 250 more pages. So like, what's gonna happen? You know, like it felt like that was a good ending of the book. And I understand it's a trilogy. She wants to continue the story and leave you like in a place where you'll read the next one. Like I totally get that, but I just feel like maybe the book could have ended already. I don't need a lead into the second book. I would have, if the book had stopped here, I would have continued reading into the second book already. I would have been captured. I'm a little iffy on how the book is going to continue and how it's going to end, because I just feel like the conflict built up enough here. Like there's enough that happened in the library scene to keep me interested in the story that could continue. But there's some interesting things about this, like the mystery. There's some kind of mystery going on here. I am anxious to see the stories of some of the other characters. I would have totally read a whole series about the librarian and his granddaughter. Would have totally read a whole series about them. That was extremely interesting to me. The whole idea of him being able to like know everything that he read, like that's so cool. Like, and his granddaughter being able to travel through mirrors is really cool. I would have read a whole series about them. I'm really interested to know what's going on with Adrian's dads, like the two main people in the superhero council. Like they are giving off very heavy, like Homelander vibes. Homelander and who's the one who wears the full body suit, who like never speaks? What's his name? Black Noir. So yeah, a very heavy Homelander and Black Noir vibes in the council, the superhero council. So I don't know if it's gonna be like that. If it is, like, whoa, that's like crazy. It's a YA book and there's not a lot in the book so far that's giving me too much craziness. Obviously it's very like, there's similarities between this and The Boys, except for The Boys is very much an adult TV show. Hugely an adult TV show. I would not recommend it to any kids to watch. It is very gory, very adult charged themes and content, but I'm getting a lot of vibes from this book to that series. I'm interested to know more about the Dread Warden and Captain Chromium. Like, they do seem to be like hiding something. There does seem to be like a mystery there that I'm interested in. With Nova and Adrian, like they're the two main characters. Okay, is there gonna be a romance between them? I honestly don't care. The romance between the other characters on the team, I really don't care. Even the other villains in the story, I could take them or leave them, to be honest. Like there are other characters in this book that I'm more interested in learning about and reading about than some of the more prominent side characters. Obviously, I really loved the librarian scene. I'm really into that scene. So like I said, I would have read a whole series about the librarian. Just starting a whole library during an apocalypse. Like so cool. Like that to me, I will read a whole book about that. That sounds awesome. That's where I'm at right now. I'm anxious to finish it just to see how it's going to end. If it does end like the way I think it's going to, like on a cliffhanger, and it's like, oh, now you have to read the second one. That does not work for me. Honestly, if you do that, if you do that in a book, it doesn't work for me. I read it and I'm like, oh, okay, I know what you're trying to do and it's not gonna work. Like, it's just, that's how it is for me sometimes. Like, I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm so jaded, I guess, when it comes to series. Like, I've gone through so many series I've read like when I was younger. Like I probably would have worked when I was an actual teen, but now that I'm an adult and I feel like I know better and I've read so many of these series, I'm just kind of like, okay, great. You're trying to get me invested in a story and I'm just like not into that. So I'm interested. I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to try to stay positive. I hope that the inconsistencies don't pull me out too much. I don't know if anybody else felt the way that I do about the inconsistencies in dialogue and stuff and plot points. Like, I don't know if anybody else noticed that. It's pulling me out. Like, it's kind of yanking me out of the story a little bit. I'll let you know when I finish the book. I've got 150 pages left. It'll be soon. Okay? See you soon. Nothing won't be lost if you try. I'm pretty sure it's more. You'll change your life. Nothing won't be lost if you dive so deep into my heart. I'm back again and finished Renegades. I actually finished this book on the last day of school, before I went on the last day field trip, which was amazing, by the way. And then I realized after I finished this book that I did not make any B-roll of me reading it. So I retroactively filmed myself reading this book next to my cats. Enjoy. That's why I'm wearing the same outfit. But I actually read this quite a few days ago. It feels like weeks. I just finished the teacher's last day of school today. I finished moving all of my stuff, which is why I look incredibly tired. Or not. Maybe not. Maybe the lighting has actually done me some favors today. So I would like to talk about my feelings about Renegades. I totally saw the ending of this book coming. I think the last time I talked about this book was during the library scene, which was about 100, maybe 200 pages before the end. And I couldn't imagine what else was going to happen in the book. The ending was kind of weird. It feels like it makes the characters dumber to me. I did enjoy reading the book. I liked it. But I did find it hard to be in the world of the book because there were still so many inconsistencies and the characters themselves just felt not like how they were supposed to be written, if that makes sense. Adrian seems completely blinded by his infatuation with Nova to see all of the red flags that she's putting up. I mean, since the beginning, really, she's been putting up a lot of red flags for pretty much everyone in the entire Renegades unit. Then there's Nova, who's supposed to be like really good at observation and like figuring stuff out. She's supposed to be kind of like smart in that respect. And I don't know if she saw the betrayal coming, and I feel like she definitely should have. I feel like it was quite obvious. Like, the setup for it was very clear. I don't want to spoil too much, but I still feel like the betrayal at the end with the climax between her and the other villain in the story, who's supposed to be like the real villain, it was pretty obvious. Why trust a person who's already kind of like stabbed you in the back once? Like, that seems a little silly to me. Like, it just didn't really make a lot of sense. I feel like both she and Adrian are incredibly lucky. They have a lot of plot armor at the end of this book to not have died. There's a lot of people, I feel like, at the end of this book who have a lot of plot armor. And I guess a lot of the end of this book is setting it up for the sequels, which I have to say, at the end of this book, I think I said it in my last review, you can't really get me at this point. I'm so old and crotchety, heading into, decades worth of life and so much reading and going to bed at 9 p.m. So tired right now. It's nowhere near 9 p.m., by the way. I'm just tired. I'm just like so old and tired. But anyway, the end of this book, I did really not care. The twist at the end was also kind of obvious. I see what they're doing, I see what she's doing, what Marissa Meyer is doing here with the end of this book. I get like kind of where she's trying to go. I'm not that interested in reading the rest of the series. I might, but there are a lot of other series that I want to read right now, a lot of other books that I want to read right now. I don't know if I really am interested in reading the rest of the series. It's an interesting book. It's an interesting take on the whole superhero thing, but I'm feeling like superheroes are a little outdone for me. I hate to be the old, crotchety, cynical reader here with this series, with this book especially, but probably not my fave on the 8th grade summer reading list. I mean, I think everybody knows what my favorite is at this point. It's Scythe and Neil Shusterman. I can't really say anything bad about any of his books that I've read, and this one in comparison was not as good and kind of disappointing. I was kind of excited to read this book, really glad to get to the end of it. Just too many inconsistencies for me, too many things taking me out of the book, taking me away from the characters, away from the world. Like I said, I'm really down for like a spin-off series about the other characters that seem a little bit more interesting, the other prodigies. I really, really don't care about Nova or Adrian or the other renegades that are in their group. Just kind of like at that point. Which it makes me feel really bad because I really want to be like, this is a good book, you should read it. But I think it's too long. That's my personal opinion. So if you have a different opinion, I'd love for you to share it. There's maybe something I missed. Maybe the other 2 books in the series get better. Yeah, so that's everything. That's all I got. Sorry. Still work on that summer reading project though, and do check out the other things that I'm doing this summer. And there's other books that I'm really excited about reading. There's, some summer streams that I'm excited about doing here soon, or that I've already started doing. So look out for those. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and have a fabulous day. Bye.